Hi Rick, we are Group 2. We are going to present an analysis of COVID-19 cases and deaths. The data scientist of our group is Neha Joseph. Roshna Babu is the business intelligence analyst. My name is Gopika Shaji. I'm the data analyst. As an introduction, the first thing that we did is collecting our data. We downloaded the desired dataset. Then we did a little bit of cleansing on the dataset using Jupyter Notebook, and using Power BI, we created relevant charts to accomplish the objectives. And finally, we derived the conclusions. Our group chose the data narrative tragedy, and when we first hear the word tragedy, according to the current scenario, the first thing that comes to our mind is COVID-19. So we downloaded a data set that is related to COVID-19 cases and deaths, and it contains information on 187 countries. It has weekly and new estimates of confirmed cases and deaths. We got this dataset from Data12, and the original source is our world in data, which relies on Johns Hopkins University for the data. Our objective is to conduct a country-wise analysis of cases and deaths and to view significant pattern of the same in these 2 years. By accomplishing this objective, we can have an idea of the most and least affected countries due to COVID-19, and we can view the changes in number of cases and deaths across various countries. Also, we can have an idea of the countries that would put forward effective measures to tackle the pandemic. Our dataset did not contain much attributes, so we did a little bit of cleansing on the dataset. We did it on Jupyter Notebook. The first thing we did is checking for the null values, and we dropped the rows that contain them. Then we dropped 2 columns, total cases and total deaths, which we did not use in the analysis. This is the original dataset, and this is the dataset after cleaning process. Now let's have a look at this is a general trend of daily new confirmed COVID-19 cases per million people in the UK, France, United States, India, Germany, and Canada. And we can see that in the initial stage, the daily confirmed cases were between 0 and 200 in these countries, but it significantly increased during the November of 2020 and February of 2021. It reached more than 800 in the UK, the US. Now we will have a look at the general trend for deaths per million people. The death was it was high in the UK and US during the initial period in the March and April of 2020. Then it decreased in these countries, and again during the second wave around during November and February, during the November of 2020 and February 2021, it again increased to 18 deaths per day in the UK. So now I hand over to Neha Joseph, who is the data scientist of our group, to demonstrate the analysis that she has done on the Jupyter Notebook.
Thank you, Gopika. Hi, I'm Neha Joseph, and I'm the data scientist of this group. So here we are doing the exploratory data analysis of the COVID dataset, and in order to do that, the first thing that we have done is importing libraries. The libraries that we use over here are pandas, matplotlib, and plotly. Pandas is used to clean and transform and then import the dataset, and matplotlib and plotly are used to plot certain graphs. Now, the next step is to import the dataset. Here the dataset is a CSV file, therefore we are using read_CSV to import the dataset. Once the dataset was imported, we look into the data, and this is our dataset, and here we can see that there are certain null values visible over here. So we have checked for the null values, and we have observed that there are certain null values, and the function that we have used to check the null value is dataset.isNull.sum, where we get the information regarding the null values of the entire data set. So once we have identified the null values, then we have dropped the null values using a drop NA function, and then after removing all the null values, we have checked for the duplicates, and here we can see that other duplicates are not there in this data set. And now once these steps are done, we look into the data set, and here we observe that this total cases and total deaths are columns are irrelevant in this data set, because the values are adding up, and which will give a error in the analysis. Therefore we remove the columns total cases and total deaths using the drop function. Once we remove the total cases and total deaths, the next thing that we have done is to check for unique values in the column location, so that we can see which all other countries that are mentioned here. So here we have looked the unique values using the unique function. This is the dataset, and this is the column name, and this function gives the unique values. So here, while considering this values, we have seen that it has also mentioned the continent's name as well, like Asia, Australia, and North America, South America, and so on. So we are removing the continents, but we are not removing the continent Australia, because we are considering Australia as a country, not a continent. Therefore, the next step is to remove the continents and as well as the value world. So we are removing the values by defining a new data frame which does not include these values. For that, we have used the function not equal to. So we get a new data set or data frame with the name data. Since we have removed certain values from the data set, we have to reset the index, and therefore we are using the reset index function to reset the data set with data frame named data. Once the resetting is done, the next step that we do is look into the information regarding the data frame, and here we can see that there are total 84,648 entries in this data set, and since we have removed the null values, there are no null values present in this data frame now, and the type of the columns are object for date and location, and float 64 for rest of the columns. So once that is done, we again check for the unique values, but this time we are checking for the number of unique values in each column, and especially for location, and therefore you can see that in location there are 187 different unique values, which means there are 187 unique countries that we are talking about. And here we can see that the name of the continents are being removed from the data frame. Now, so we have done now we have checked for null values, we have checked for duplicates, and we have removed null values, and then we have removed irrelevant columns, and we have removed irrelevant values from the column named location. So the pre-processing is over. So now we are looking into the visualization techniques. Here we are using very few visualization techniques, and the very first one is a line plot. In order to do the line plot, we are creating a pivot table at first, which contains a data as index and the new cases and new dates as values. And after creating the pivot table, we have defined figure 1 and figure 2, where figure 1 contains x is date as x and new cases as y, while figure 2 contained new dates as y and dates as x. And here we can see the line plot for here we can see the line plot for new cases, and here the cases were very low in February 2020, and it was increasing slightly, and it reached its peak on Jan 2021, and it closed around 881k, and it decreased, but again it increased, and by April 2021 it reached around 900k. Even though it started to decrease, by the end of June it again started to increase. Now looking into the death cases over time, it is almost the same case as the new cases. It was very low by the February starting of 2020, and we could see that the death rate were fluctuating by the month of April, May till September, October, but it started to increase, and in January it was around 18.06k, and it started to decrease again, and by again as same as new cases, the new deaths also increased by April, and it started to decrease again by June. But we could see over here that there is a slight increase by the starting of July. In order to do the next graph, we have created a data frame DF, which contains the values of continents. To do that, at first we have created 5 different data frames which contains the values of the continents, which are Europe, North America, South America, Asia and Africa, and then we have concatted it using pd.concat, and we got the data frame as DF, and this is the data frame. And now at first we used the bar plot to plot the weekly cases in the given locations, and we can see that Asia is the continent with the highest number of weekly cases, which is followed by Europe, and then by North America, South America and Africa. Now this is the overall weekly case plot, and now here we can see that here in this graph it is explained well about the weekly cases of each continent. We can see that in the month of February, that is 2020, there were only few cases in Asia, and later in February 15, there were cases in Europe, and followed by in North America, and in all the continents the cases started to increase, and by November 10, 2020, in all the locations there were cases, but Europe was the continent with the highest rate of weekly cases, and it started to decrease very slightly for Europe, but it started to increase in North America, and by March 2021, the cases decreased in all the continents, but we could see that in the month of April, by mid of April, the cases or the weekly cases very, very much high in Asia compared to all other continents, and it's reached its peak on May 4th by starting of the May, and it started to decrease again, but by the end, that is by the latest report, by July 15, the cases has started to increase slightly for all the continents, and a very notable thing over here is the only continent which had a very few cases was Africa. Rest all cases, for rest all the continents, the cases were fluctuating, and for Asia it was very much high during the month of May. So these were the visualization plots that we have used over here. So once we have done the visualization plot and the pre-processing thing, what we have done is we have downloaded the data frame into a Excel file, and we have saved it as the COVID dataset.xlx, and this is about the pre-processing and a little bit of visualization. Now Roshna will be talking more about the visualization part.
Thank you, Neha. Hi, my name is Roshna Babu. I am the business intelligence analyst of this group. My duty is to build a presentation and an interactive data visualization. So for visualizing our COVID-19 dataset, I used Power BI tool. Starting with the dataset, we have two datasets. One is the country-wise report and other is the continent-wise report. Our major focus is the country-wise COVID-19 cases and death reports reported on every day in the year of 2020 and 2021. Apart from the cleansed dataset, I used three more columns to get more insights, that are population immunity, recovery prospects, and the month. So moving with the graph, first is a map showing the different countries and their average number of cases and new deaths reported on a daily basis. As I already said, I have categorized countries into two based on their recovery status, the strong recovery prospect and weak recovery prospect. It is calculated based on the population immunity rate. So in the tooltip, I have given the recovery status and population immunity of the country too, so that we can easily identify whether the country has a strong recovery status or the weak one. Next graph shows the average of new cases and death by country. From the graph itself, it is clear that new cases and death per day are high in United States, followed by India and Brazil. In US, the average per day COVID cases meet close to 70k and average daily death rate touches 60k. The next one shows the average new cases and new death rate of each continent. For analyzing that, I have used a stacked bar chart. From the graph itself, it is evident that Asia is marked with highest daily new cases and death, followed by Europe and least with Africa. Next is a line chart showing the biweekly cases and death rate of each country. The orange line shows the average of biweekly cases and the green one shows the biweekly death. It is evident that US leads with the highest number of COVID cases, followed by India and Brazil. In this graph, we can find that the weekly death rate is very low for US, India and Brazil compared to their active cases reported. This indicates that the countries succeeded in controlling the cases and it will keep them in a strong recovery status category. Next one is a clustered column chart showing the total new cases and new deaths reported each day for the year 2020 and 2021. The dataset contains values from March 2020 to July 2021. In 2020, the cases reported from all the countries crosses 80 million and the cases reported in 2021 till July only crosses 100 million. That means there is a huge increase in the daily reported cases in 2021. The total death reported in 2020 is almost 2 million. Whereas in 2021, it is almost same as 2.1 million. That means the country succeeded in controlling death rate. There is no huge difference from the previous year. The next graph shows the average of new cases and death in each month of 2020 and 2021. In 2020, the cases reported in March is very low and highest in December. From graph, we can see that the rate of new cases and death reported increases in each month. In 2021, the January leads with the highest reported cases and death, but the values are fluctuating each month. In February and March, it shows a decrease in reported cases, but it increased in April. In May and June, we can see a decline, but it increases in July. That shows the irresponsibility of the people when they get a little ease from the lockdown restrictions. Moving with the Power BI dashboard, this is the final look of our dashboard. I have given some slices and cards for easy visualization. First is a map showing the different countries and their COVID-19 reported cases and death. If we put our tooltip in any particular area, we can see that this is a location showing Canada, and the average new cases of Canada is 2,894, and the average of new death is just 53. And we can see that the population immunity of Canada is 472, and as per our calculation, we can see that Canada is under the strong recovery prospect country. Next one is the average of new cases and average of new death by continents. From the graph itself, we can see that Asia stands with the highest rate, and followed by Europe and least with Africa. Next is a line and stack to column chart. The column shows the average of new cases and the line shows the average of death rate. It is clear that US stands first with highest new cases and death, followed by India. But in India, the death is low compared to US, and in Brazil, death rate is higher than reported new cases. That is only because of the low COVID-19 test rate. This one shows the new death and new cases for both years. It is evident that in 2021 there is a huge increase in the reported cases compared to 2020. In 2020 the cases are almost 80 million, and 2021 it crosses almost 100 million. And a great insight from this graph is we can see there is no huge difference in death rate. That means even though countries fail to control the spread of COVID-19, every country is trying their maximum to decrease the death rate. Next is a line graph showing the biweekly reports. The orange line shows the biweekly cases and green one shows the biweekly death. Here also US stands first, followed by India and Brazil. The major focus of this graph is the death rate. The death rate is comparatively low for all countries. Next is the graph showing the average of new cases and new death by year and month. In 2020, the highest rate of COVID-19 cases are reported in the month of December, and it is low in the month of March. In 2021, the values of each month is fluctuating. It is high in the month of April and decreased in the month of July. That means in each month it is continuously increasing and decreasing. This is just because of the people badly utilizing the little eases provided by the government during the lockdown. Last is the slices. We can visually analyze the graph according to our wish by applying the filters. Suppose we want to see the values of Australia for the month of December. We can see that here all our graphs are changed according to the filters. Here we can see the average number of cases in the month of December is 16.55, and the number of new deaths is 0.03, and the biweekly cases are 198, and the average number of biweekly deaths are 0.55. Here we can see that this is the country showing the Australia, and the average of new cases is 16.55 and average of new death is 0.03. And Australia is under the strong recovery prospect country. And here we can see the new cases and new death by in the country Australia. Australia, the average of new cases is 16.55 and the death is 0.03. And here it shows the new deaths and new cases in the year of 2020, the month of December. The new cases reported for Australia in that month is 513 and the new death is 1. And this shows the bi-weekly cases and bi-weekly deaths of Australia. And it shows 198.23 cases and 0.055 deaths. And this also shows the average new cases and new deaths for the month December in the year 2020. So that's all about the visualization part, and the conclusion will be handled by Gopika.
Now let's have a look at the conclusions that we derived. This is the plot for the daily deaths and cases in 187 countries. The highest number of daily cases is reported in the USA, around 70k, and more than 60k cases were reported in India, and Brazil comes in the third position with a daily cases of 40k. And for other countries, the number is comparatively less. And when it comes to the daily deaths, US still remains on the top position. However, the number of deaths is higher in Brazil than India. And in the plot, we can see that for some countries, the number of deaths is higher than the reported case. That's because the less number of tests that they conducted, especially in Mexico, it is significantly higher than the reported case. So we can understand that the tests conducted in these countries were inadequate. Now, among these 187 countries, the US, India, and Brazil are the countries which got highly impacted by COVID-19. Also, these countries failed to implement adequate measures to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is the plot for total of daily cases and deaths. The total of daily cases of all countries was around 18 million in 2020, and it is increased to more than 100 million in 2021. However, there were no significant changes in the total deaths in both years, and it was around 1 million. With this, we conclude our presentation. Thank you so much.